Stand up.
10 days, everybody, 10 days left, and then we will know the fate of our country and ourselves. I'm so happy to have you with me and really excited to share my conversation with comedian, commentator, co-host of The Daily Beans. It's Dana Goldberg on Stand Up. Many of you know her because you've heard her on Stephanie Miller. You listen to The Daily Beans with Allison Gill, and you love her over there. Well, I've got her over here on Stand Up, and it's a great conversation. She's real smart, real funny. I think you will like it. That begins at
27 minutes.
Also, I did follow through on what I was trying to do this week. Every once in a while, I'm able to actually say something and then actually do it, unlike my swing state tour and plenty of other things throughout my career that I promised for you and haven't delivered. I did this week by bringing all these women on their show. Last week, it was a lot of dudes. This week, it was all women. I hope you liked it. Great conversations with Celeste Headley, Dr. Christina Greer, Dr. Miranda Yaver, and Mara Quint joined me yesterday. And of course, today, Dana Goldberg rounding out the week. I'll be talking next to activist Jon Cryer, who starred, of course, on 2.5 Men. He was Ducky and Pretty in Pink, and everybody knows Jon Cryer if you're around a certain age. Had an awesome conversation with him. You're going to love it. Thanks to everybody who was at the Hangout last night. I'm sure it was awesome. I'm laying this down before the Hangout actually happens, but it's always a great time with a great guest stopping by to join us who is running for state Senate in Wisconsin. Thank you very much to Jim Babowski for setting up our conversation with Andy Rich, who is running for state Senate in District 12. Loved that, I'm sure. I bet, right? Because it hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure it was great. And if you want to watch the Hangout, relive it, if you couldn't make it, then please check out the link. It's in the email to subscribers. If you're not a paid subscriber, then please sign up. That's the only way we can do it. You can always pay more, like several of you have recently. I really appreciate you raising your pledge monthly because you're getting a lot out of the podcast. That is awesome. So patreon.com/Pete Dominic, as always, to support the podcast. Oh, man, I didn't even get out of my house yesterday. I was just sitting here in front of the computer most of the day, working the phones and planning on doing a lot of that today and throughout the weekend. What are your plans? I hope that you're finding time both to relax as well as different ways to get out the vote. Look forward to connecting you however and wherever we can, as always, on the Discord platform, which all paid subscribers have access to. Let's see. Let's read one email from a listener. This is Michelle in Canada again, who said, just want to tell you how much I love your conversations with Dr. Chrissy Greer. She's so amazing on your show. I see her on TV, but she can't be as natural and fulsome in her commentary as she is on your show. You two have such fabulous discussions. Thank you, Michelle from Canada. Thank you, Michelle. That was a very nice email. Got a disturbing email from a listener named Dave, who the last time we heard from Dave, he was upset about the podcast because the music was too loud at the end of the podcast and it would wake him up. So I made a big thing about that with Dave. But now Dave's emailed me with something much more consequential because he lives in Michigan, and he said, I cannot stand Mara Quint on the show. She wishes literal death on people she doesn't like. It's gross. I don't remember her doing that. And if she did, it's probably a joke. But anyway, he says, I'm a Michigan voter that voted for Jill Stein. Oh, Dave. He says, the Democratic Party no longer gets my vote for free. They need to be separate from the uniparty duopoly on issues that really matter, like democracy reform, freedom of legal speech, real support of promotion of sane warfare practices globally. Listen, here's the deal. Dave goes on, he says, the Democratic Party sucks. They largely do not support our real non-social issues differently than Republicans. Please, Dave, come on the show. I invite you to discuss this with me. I have no idea what you're talking about. I see it very differently. I'd love to have a thoughtful and respectful conversation. So if you want to come on, let me know and we'll set it up. All right. Because I think you have thrown your vote away for sure. And I know you don't believe that. So I'll give you the opportunity to talk with me about it if you want. So the floor is yours. The opportunity is yours, Dave. Let me know. All right. Now let's get to the headlines. Enough from the emails, but I love them. Keep it coming. standupwithpete@gmail.com. Well, this is a headline I hated reading and a story I really don't want to know more about, but thus I must have to begin with it. 1 year after world leaders made a landmark promise to move away from fossil fuels, countries have essentially made no progress in cutting emissions and tackling global warming, according to a new UN report released today. The report said that nations have been so slow to curtail their use of oil, gas, and coal that it now looks unlikely that countries will be able to hold global warming to the limit they agreed to under the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. Not good news. Didn't like reading it, but a very important story. And more news from Canada yesterday. The Prime Minister, who's embattled in controversy, apparently, being asked to step down by some in his own party, Justin Trudeau, announced that Canada would significantly cut the number of newcomers it's allowing into the country. He said the rapid growth in the country's immigrant population over the past 3 years has strained resources like housing and healthcare. Its annual target for the number of people made permanent residents currently is at 500,000. It's going to now fall to 395,000 next year, 380 in 26, 365 in 2027. So if Trump wins, you might have a hard time getting up there. But our friends in Canada will be able to house some of us, right? Right, Carlo? Michelle? Where are you guys? And let's head over to the Middle East, where diplomatic efforts continue. U.S. and Israeli negotiators travel to Doha, Qatar, in the coming days. The top diplomats for U.S. and Qatar said Thursday, intending to resume long-stalled talks to reach a ceasefire deal and secure the release of hostages in Gaza. The announcement comes as Israeli forces killed the head of Hamas earlier this month. The militant group continues its search for a new leader. So put your resumes on LinkedIn and see if you might be qualified to be the new leader of Hamas. I just thought of that because they're continuing a search. Where are they searching? Online? Are they taking applications? Well, let's head over to North Korea. Russia's relationship is really blossoming. Now they're sending thousands of troops to Russia, North Koreans. The U.S. says they're training in Russia's Far East, may end up in combat against Ukrainian soldiers. The North Korean forces are small in number, at least 3,000, the U.S. is saying, compared with the hundreds of thousands the West estimates have been killed in Ukraine on both sides. But it may allow Russia to reorganize and push forward. And if it works, North Korea could send more. It has a 1 million-strong army. And now South Korea, in retaliation, saying they may send forces to Ukraine, or may send Ukraine weapons after North Korea has sent actual humans to Russia. So far, South Korea has helped Ukraine by providing arms to the U.S. and other countries, but the governor said it could change now with the introduction of North Korean troops for Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin name-checked former President Trump at this week's big BRIC summit and seemingly welcomed the Republican nominee's desire to end the Russian-Ukraine war. And I'm sure they're talking and texting about that as well, the two of them, because they have mutual admiration. And now let's come home to some good news. President Joe Biden plans to do the right thing and formally apologize Friday for the U.S. government's role in running hundreds of Indian boarding schools for a 150-year period that stripped Native American children of their language and culture in a systematic effort to force them to assimilate into white society. This, according to administration officials, a long time that apology coming from an American president. It's good to see President Joe Biden formally doing that today. And this is good news. We'll just wait for it. But a Missouri resident who shared a home with a patient hospitalized with bird flu in August was also infected with the virus. Now, that sounds bad, but apparently symptomatic healthcare workers who cared for the hospitalized patient, they were not infected, according to tests. The news eased worries among researchers that the virus, HVN1, had gained the ability to spread more efficiently among people. So that's a good sign. And more on vaccine news. Doctors have long urged people ages 50 and older to get a shot to protect against bacterial pneumonia. Well, the CDC is now agreeing on Wednesday. An independent group of advisors at the CDC voted 14-1 to lower the age for routine pneumococcal vaccines to age 50. The CDC director, Dr. Mandy Cohen, almost immediately signed off on the recommendation from the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. The shots were previously only recommended for adults 65 and older and for children 5 and younger. So that's big news. Also, get your flu shot, get your COVID booster. And McDonald's is recalling onions from their big onion supplier as an E. coli outbreak cases continue to rise. Taylor Farms sends those onions to McDonald's, and they are tainted. So that's what you get for having onions on your McDonald's burger. I would never, ever go to McDonald's, and I certainly wouldn't get onions on my burger, or I might also do those things all the time, but I probably never would. And now, nearly a month after remnants of Hurricane Helene ravaged western North Carolina, well, the city of Asheville still has no drinkable tap water. I wanted to mention that. I wanted to also mention how interesting it is that India was able to evacuate 1 million people from parts of its eastern coast in anticipation of a tropical cyclone approaching their east coast. And now in some campaign news, a whole slew of Republicans endorsed Kamala Harris in key swing states yesterday, which I think is great news. Some people are criticizing the strategy where Kamala Harris is trying to attract former Republican or even people who would still identify as Republican voters. I'm not one of those people. I think it's a great strategy. I don't know why she wouldn't. And to the idea that she might be losing progressives as a result, I don't see that. How could you? What kind of a person would lean liberal, democratic, or progressive and not vote for her as a result of this strategy? I think it's ridiculous. I'm sure there are plenty, but I'd love to talk to you people to try to understand what you're thinking. Anyway, here are some of the Republicans yesterday that came out in support of her. First, here's Kamala Harris talking about that fact yesterday, which I think is good. Time to get to your audio clips on today's shows. Clark's Clips this whole week. That's what I named it. Thanks to Clark being the first listener that I at least remember reading who reached out and specifically said how much he loves the audio. Now, many more of you have as well, and that's gratefully appreciated. Here's Kamala Harris talking about the defectors from the Republican Party and against Donald Trump.
But two leaders in the Republican Party, the mayor of Waukesha, and then, of course, former Representative Fred Upton. And this continues to be, I think, evidence of the fact that people who have been leaders in our country, regardless of their political party, understand what's at stake. And they are weighing in courageously, in many cases, in support of what we need to have, which is a president of the United States who understands the obligation to uphold the Constitution of the United States and our democracy.
Well, there you go. And here is the mayor of Waukesha, I think, doing a pretty good job explaining this to a local radio host yesterday. Hopefully it matters. I mean, it's way too late, but we'll take it.
I probably should have done this sooner, but there was concern, about blowback and public safety and all that. So I'm going to be ready for that. And I really think this is the most important, one of the most important things I've done. And hopefully people will accept that and listen to me. Those that have trusted me and, believed in me will think about that. And if they're undecided, that we have to make a change here. And Trump has to be defeated, and we have to protect the Constitution, and country will go on.
All right. Well, not that articulate, but still a strong endorsement. Now, Fred Upton, he sat in front of a camera and he read his statement, and I'm going to give you all 3 minutes of it from the former Republican congressman in Michigan. This hopefully should matter. I mean, it's got to, right? To some people.
I was in Congress when Trump got elected for the first time in 26, the only time. As soon as he started his run for president, something in our politics, however, began to change. There have always been fierce disagreements between lawmakers, let's face it. But there have always been impassioned fights about policy. But with Trump in charge, politics was more personal, more angry, and more divided than ever before. During my time in public service, I was proud of my bipartisan record. But with Trump, it became so much more difficult to find compromise across the aisle and solve problems for our constituents. Our work should be based on civility and good government, not the nasty attacks and hateful rhetoric that Trump represents. This new era for our politics became violently clear on January 6th. I was there in the Capitol when rioters, encouraged by former President Trump, stormed the building, tried to overturn the results of a free and fair election. I spent time with Capitol police officers, one from my district, who stepped up to make sure that we were safe. I saw this tragedy with my own eyes, and I truly believe that it will go down as one of the darkest moments in the history of our nation. Trump has said that his actions on that day, jeopardizing the peaceful transfer of power, were totally appropriate. His words, totally appropriate. And he's been sowing doubt for months about the integrity of this upcoming election. If he loses, he'll spread another big lie, and that could spark even more political violence. True leaders take responsibility. They tell the truth. They put their duty before personal greed and ambition. True leaders treat people with respect, even when those folks disagree with them. Trump does none of that. Instead of focusing on making people's lives better, Trump is leveling personal attacks, spreading more election lies, and engaging in some of the most unstable and unhinged behavior that we've ever seen from a presidential candidate. Time and time again, he's shown that he's completely unfit to serve as commander-in-chief. So today, I'm joining more than 30 former Republican members of Congress who publicly refused to support Donald Trump, and am proud to say that I've already cast my ballot for Kamala Harris. I've never before voted for a Democrat for president, and I honestly never thought I would. But she's strong, committed public servant. She's running to put people together, strengthen our economy, and protect our fundamental freedoms. We certainly don't agree on every policy, that's for sure. But I know that Harris has the best interests of the American people at heart. And I know that she embodies that kind of leadership that we need in the Oval Office to get things done. It's often said that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. In this race, in this defining moment for our democracy, it's simply not an option to do nothing. I invite every single person across the country, Republican or Democrat, to stand up against the hate and chaos of Donald Trump and vote for Harris as the next president of the United States.
All right, and now here's CNN's Jake Tapper, who seems to finally be waking up that there are two planets, Earth 1 and Earth 2, and too long those on CNN and corporate media in general have not really, I think, understood that and have been framing this as a kind of normal presidential campaign. I think he does and says the right thing on the panel of CNN stars after last night's town hall. Here it is.
You know, it strikes me what's interesting about the moment we're in right now is that we in the media are treating Vice President Harris like we treat a normal politician, and we're critiquing her answers, and we're talking about, well, she could have said this differently, she could have said that differently. Meanwhile, the Republican nominee literally is talking about liberals being the enemy within, talking about using the military to go after these people. His defenders say, oh, no, he's talking about going after illegal immigrants, or he's going after mobs in the street. And Trump will say, no. I mean, going after the Pelosi's, going after Adam Schiff, going after Democrats. And these campaigns are in two different universes.
Yep. Two different universes. You got that right. Well, there you go. It's about time he's arrived at that conclusion and said it publicly, and should say it a lot more all the time, everybody. All right, now here is Pete Buttigieg, who lives on Earth 1. He was on CNN last night talking about this whole controversy regarding General John Kelly and his statements on the record that we shared here and everyone shared everywhere and still impenetrable to MAGA Nation. That's my conclusion, at least from what I've seen. But here is Pete Buttigieg being as articulate as he always is.
You obviously, former military. What's your response to what Trump is saying to John Kelly tonight?
Well, of course, it's an insult to the military. It's an insult to veterans. But he's also telling on himself, right? One of the most important things that a president does is choose key personnel. Donald Trump has often claimed that he's good at that, which he would need to be in order to be a good president. He chose John Kelly, and not for some random appointment to some obscure board. He chose him to be his number one advisor, his chief of staff, the most important official in the White House. And by the way, he did that because John Kelly has a reputation as a great general and a great leader. Let's also remember that General Kelly, his son, gave his life in the defense of this country. There's no question in who is credible between the two of them. Donald Trump, who's told more documented, provable lies than any modern American politician, or General Kelly, who is a person of integrity and who you can tell didn't do this lightly. I cannot think of another time in American history, certainly in my lifetime, when a president or a candidate for president was denounced by his own chief of staff. Again, this isn't some random liberal group saying these things about Donald Trump, telling these stories. Or, we're talking about his own chief of staff and a whole bunch of other people, from his Secretary of Defense to...
All right, there you go. You've been Buttigieged. And also joining CNN last night, this is with Caitlin Collins, I guess. Yeah, here it is. Hillary Clinton was asked what she thinks Kamala Harris has to do to avoid a repeat of 2016.
What do you think Vice President Harris needs to do, in your view, to avoid a repeat?
Well, first of all, I don't think she has Jim Comey in the wings waiting to kneecap her, so that's good, and I'm very grateful for that. But I think she is doing what she needs to do, and in reporting from today, I think by CNN, a number of the voters who were at your town hall have said she convinced them, that she had shown the kind of empathy and concern about their problems, that she'd come forward with her ideas, her suggested policies. So I think she's doing what she needs to do. And from my perspective, that's not only her job, it's the job of all of us who are supporting her. It's obviously the job of the messaging, the advertising, everything that goes into the final sprint to the election.
All right, Hillary Clinton on CNN last night, and Kamala Harris was campaigning in Atlanta with a whole bunch of stars, including Raphael Warnock, President Barack Obama, and Tyler Perry. Here's a little bit from Senator Raphael Warnock in his state of Atlanta, Georgia.
So let me defy Baptist gravity and be brief. There's a lot of talk these days about what black men are going to do. Let me speak to that for just a moment. Let me say that I do not believe that there's going to be this wave. I do not believe that significant numbers of black men are going to vote for the likes of Donald Trump. I don't believe that. Now, we are not a monolith. There will be some, but there won't be this wave. After all, we know who Donald Trump is. We're not confused. We know that this is the man who was held accountable by the Justice Department because he wouldn't even rent apartments to black people. We know who Donald Trump is. We know that this is the man who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times and said that 5 young men of color who had been accused of a heinous crime should receive the death penalty. And when it became clear that they were not guilty, when the Central Park 5 became the exonerated 5, he said he still stood by what he said. We know who Donald Trump is. This is the man who entered into the political arena on a racist birther lie that the first African-American president was not born here. We know what he was up to. He was trying to say, you're not one of us. But I believe that the American people will reject this hatred, will reject this bigotry. We understand that we are one people.
Well, I hope you are right, sir. Powerful words coming from Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock. And now here is a moment that took down the House. Tyler Perry speaking at the event last night.
You want to hear something about an American dream? Fort McPherson was once a Confederate Army base where there were Confederate soldiers trying to plot and plan on how to keep 3.9 million Negroes enslaved. Now that land is owned by me.
Ooh, I like it. There you go, Tyler Perry. That was quite a line. I had no idea about that. But yesterday in Clarkston, Georgia. Very cool. And now, here finally, some jokes, some comedy. This is brought to you by the CBS Late Show. It's Stephen Colbert's monologue last night.
The big news continues to be that Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, said that Trump is a fascist who loves Hitler. Well, at least he's not a fascist who loves Hitler. What's that? I'm sorry, hold on a second. I'm being told that's exactly what I just read out loud, but my brain refused to receive the sounds my mouth was making. Got it. Okay, that's good. Well, that's fascinating. So in 11 days, we all get to find out finally whether we live in a fascist country. I'm not saying that's a good feeling, but definitely the feeling. And if you feel the same way, you're not alone. Last night, Anderson Cooper asked Kamala Harris point blank what she thought.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
Bam. Thank you. Kamala Harris is not afraid. No hesitation. Zero hesitation. She's not afraid to tell the truth. Follow up, do you think Donald Trump has lost his damn mind?
Yes, I do.
Do you ever have a dream where Donald Trump falls headfirst down a long marble staircase into a hot tub full of porcupines?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Final question. If you win the presidency, do you commit now to coming back on my show?
We are not going back.
Wow.
All right, there you go. Your daily dose of comedy here on Stand Up and more. There's always more than one dose, isn't there? I hope so. Well, either way, I'm very happy to have you supporting me, and I think you're going to love listening to this conversation with Dana Goldberg, who's just awesome. We've been traveling in same lanes our whole careers as comedians and commentators, and she, like me, had been on the Stephanie Miller Show and with John Fugelsang, and now she's co-hosting the Daily Beans with Allison Gill, and it's a really interesting daily news show. They have great analysis, and they have fun with the news. I often tune in to see and hear the analysis from Allison Gill, and Dana is so good on that show with her. So I said, I've got to get her on here alone, long form, because she has so much to say, some really strong opinions on all of it, and she's as well informed as anybody I know in media. She's also a big activist, a regular attendee, involved with the Human Rights Campaign, the Trevor Project, GLAAD, and so much more. You should watch her comedy specials, follow her on social media, listen to her on Daily Beans, and right now on Stand Up, it's Dana Goldberg. Yes, I've got her. One of the best. You've heard her everywhere. Of course, Daily Beans, Stephanie Miller, and forever on all the best progressive talk shows and stages and places. Dana Goldberg, it's been way too long. I'm very, very happy that you agreed to join me here.
Well, you're my dose of sanity today. You actually kept me from doom scrolling Twitter and fighting with people that I've never met and will never meet. So I'm happy to be here with you today.
How much time have you ever thought about, and where are the spaces that you spend time doing that? And how much time have you spent? And when, like, I find it interesting and purposeful, and I don't know if it's making any change, but I like to argue with the people in my town on our Facebook page.
I sort of love that, although you will have a chance of running into them. But I feel like maybe you can actually reach them, sit down and be like, hey, let's get off this and grab a cup of coffee. That's never going to happen to the blue checks on Twitter with me. I mean, it's just one of those things. So I think you may actually reach people. I'm arguing into the ethos, and I'm like, why am I doing this?
Well, you know, I mean, yeah, there's a difference between people you don't know and people you do know, obviously. But do you genuinely want to know their answer to a thing? I think when it comes to the fever and the cult of Trump, I still want to know, like, hey, did you just hear John Kelly, the Marine, former chief of staff, saying the most dramatic things ever? Did that affect you at all? Like, I want to know how they feel when they hear that, Dana. Do you have any interest or curiosity in if anything would break the fever, the cult membership?
Absolutely. I actually do. You know, I was taking a writing class. I'm, as you know, I'm a writer as well. And there's something called getting to the bullseye, because they're trying to figure out how we can actually talk to each other again and maybe see the humanity in each other and try and bridge this massive gap that keeps getting even wider. And God forbid, over after November 5th, could just be, you know, a black hole of nothingness. But that's not going to go, because Kamala Harris is going to be the next president of the United States. But the idea is getting to the bullseye. So if you say something to me about you're frustrated with, let's say it's a Trumper that's saying to us, I don't feel seen in this country anymore. White people or, you know, minorities are taking over. Trans people are blah, 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 blah. Immediately, there's a big part of me that wants to go tell them to, you know, get outside, turn off Fox News and get some air. But in order to reach people, we have to be able to almost parrot what they're feeling. So what I'm hearing you say is you feel left behind by this country. You feel like there are people that you can blame for this, and try and sort of regurgitate what they're saying so someone can be like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Yeah. And then we have a springboard from a place to start. But the problem is both people have to want to participate in this conversation, and it's almost impossible to get the other side to stop just immediately name calling or immediately vilifying or immediately throwing someone under the bus. So I think that's where I get caught up. But I absolutely do want to know what the other side thinks. That's why sometimes I watch Fox News just for the entertainment. I'm like, oh my God, this is what they're being indoctrinated with. Now I understand.
Yeah. It's an interesting experiment to do that. I think you described something, there's a term for it called, I think, reflective listening. I listened to this podcast, 10% Happier, with Dan Harris, and he was talking with these relationship experts, and they just explained like what you just described, which is when someone tells you something, in this case, their complaint about trans people or whatever, you tell them what you think you're hearing.
Right.
What I'm hearing you say is that you do not want trans girls to ever go in the bathroom. But what you're doing there with reflective listening is you're showing them a certain amount of respect that you're hearing them, and you're hearing them with the intentions they want you to hear them with. And then you've built trust that you could come back and say something. I think that's what you're saying. And I think that's probably effective. If there's any possibility of making a difference, that would be probably the best way to do it.
Absolutely. If someone's going to come at me and be like, I don't want men going into women's restrooms pretending to be women and committing crimes against women, I get to repeat what they say. But then also, if we can come to a talking point where they're like, yeah, that's what I feel, I can go, do you know that there's never actually been a case where a trans woman has committed a crime in a women's bathroom, but more Republicans have actually been arrested for committing crimes against women in the bathrooms? And they're like, maybe they'll hear something like that. If I'm like, I hear what you're saying, but this is actually the truth of what you're arguing with me. I had a friend and she was in the military and she said, I come across people all the time that disagree with me, and we try and have conversations. And my point that I want to get to is, if I truly respect you and you respect me, I want you to be able to argue my side for me if I'm not in the room.
Yeah.
And do it accurately. That's when you know you actually are hearing someone else in where they stand in this country.
Yeah, this is all well and good, but it's also what good faith people do.
Absolutely.
Are you really genuinely curious as to what I think? And I mean, I am about a lot of these things. I mean, I'm arguing with this guy right now on Facebook as well, saying he's Catholic and Italian, and I was Catholic and Italian. I no longer am either. And I mean, but he's saying you can't be Catholic and be pro-choice. And it's like, okay, I want to debate this with you. I want to discuss this with you. 60% of American Catholics are pro-choice. So are they not Catholic? Who gets to decide? Does the priest say they can't go? Has the Vatican made this announcement? That's a good faith argument. It's an interesting thing I think it's ridiculous what he's saying. Obviously, he's a ridiculous person, but help me know what you mean, what you think. Are you the one who decides? But Dana, so often these aren't good faith arguments. I got my ass kicked in a debate with Jimmy Fallon of Fox News, who's a stand-up comic who I've known and have always been friends with, but he's a big Trumper.
Right.
And the reason I got my ass kicked is because he was all substance and I was all policy. Or I was all substance and he was all style.
Right. Yeah, no policy, no substance.
Well, what you said of the argument about the trans thing, that's never actually happened. Like, that's a sound argument. That's data. But they don't think that way, because what Jimmy says, and what I've even heard people like S.E. Cupp say, it's how I feel. If I feel there's a lot of crime, but there isn't any crime. You don't know anybody that's been a victim of crime in our neighborhood. Yeah, but I feel that. I don't know what to do with.
Yeah, well, when someone say, I mean, it's also funny because this is from the Fuck Your Feelings party. And they're like, I feel like there's a lot of crime. I feel this way. And I don't even think they hear themselves. So in that case, and I said it on Twitter, I'm like, put down your phone, go outside, get some fresh air, stop arguing with the blue checks, and just do something in the next 12 days to get Kamala Harris and Tim Walz elected. Right. Do something. Talk to a friend. Talk to someone who's registered, but they're like, I don't feel like my vote matters anymore. Like, stop wasting your oxygen on these people unless you're defending someone that you actually care for and you think that even just putting that out there would make some sort of resonance with this person. Otherwise, just make a plan to do something like Michelle Obama said. Just do something.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. What am I doing? Arguing in these final days? I should be making phone calls, writing postcards. But so let me ask you this. Your bio says you're a woman.
It's true.
Won't the women save us? Isn't this always been the answer? And I don't care how you categorize them, white, straight, gay, old, black, young. I don't care.
Yep.
Aren't the women still angry that Donald Trump was elected president in 2016? Aren't you all still angry? Speak for as many of the women as you would like to, and tell me that you're going to save us.
I actually do believe that women are going to save us in this election, and it's not going to be the women you think. I think there's a tremendous amount of Republican women that are so fucking tired of this blowhard telling them how to act, what to do with their bodies, who they are. And I think, the voting booth is the one place that no one knows how you voted. It's your safe place. You get to go in there. You don't have to tell your husbands. And I really do think it's not just Trump. It's J.D. Vance coming out and saying that childless women don't have as big a stake in our country as people that have children, or, older people. Your job now is just to help raise your grandchildren. Stop having so many aspirations, Nancy, and just stay home and help us out. But at the same time, on the other side of the coin, he's like, we can hire, just give us money. Just give us money for, go back to work, Nana, and give us the money to help with childcare because it's too expensive. Like, I think women in general being tired of told what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And so I don't necessarily think it's just going to be the Democrats that are saving us. I think there's a lot of Republican women that are going to go in that voting booth and vote against Trump. And I will say this, and I've said it till the end of time, Black women are the ones that are going to save this country. They have been building this coalition for decades, waiting for this moment. This is our moment. It's not a coincidence. This wasn't happenstance. The fact that Kamala Harris is the nominee right now in this time in history, she is the one that can beat him. I 100% believe it.
I want to believe you're right. I talk to as many Black women as I can all the time. And I do worry that they are at the end of the race, hunched over with their hands on their knees, waving, but like, could somebody else save us this time? We did the last 3 elections and all the ones before that, but especially those, in Georgia, the runoff twice, Stacey Abrams. I think a lot about that and the Black women coalition there. And obviously, they certainly helped Biden become the nominee in 2020. But I worry that that they're almost tired and terrified or something. And I'm making that all up on my own. I know they're showing up. I know they're organizing, but I worry that we've leaned too much and put so much faith in them and the rest of the categories that are actually the problems.
100%. And I don't think our faith is misplaced. I actually do think you saw after the Black Women for Harris call, everyone picking up the baton, not reinventing it, giving credit where credit was due to the Black Women for Harris call. Then you have the white women for Harris and the white men and the evangelicals and the LGBTQ. Right. It started. And so it was nice to see people pick up the baton and not just pick it up, but thank Black women for teaching them how to build this coalition because they do it better than anybody. And so I do believe that I don't think they're tired. I think they would like for someone else to stand up so this isn't all falling on their backs and their shoulders to save this country. But I definitely think they're going to fight until the end, tooth and nail, every one of them. When you've got, and we've seen it in last elections, Pete, like midterms a couple of sessions ago, you had 12 female Black judges elected in Harris County in Houston, Texas. People get out and vote and you can change the electorate. I think people need to realize that you don't just go in and notch the presidential, button and walk out. Vote down ballot, research these judges, make sure you're voting on down ballot races because you've got places like Wisconsin that if people actually voted down ballot right now in the state legislature, in the city council, you could ungerrymander the state of Wisconsin. So don't just walk in, click the button and walk out. Make sure you stay and go down ballot with these races.
What about the woman who is really pissed about all the rhetoric and the policies, but is just as worried about undocumented people killing her and her family members and that one trans kid who wants to play volleyball or use pronouns? Like I just worry about those issues, the trans issue specifically, and the immigrant issue, that has even certain liberals, men and women, quietly going, you know what, those are a pretty big deal. And they're not thinking like we're thinking about what about women's health care? What about that first? What about so many other things way before those things? It's hard for me to understand that thinking. But I worry specifically on those two issues and how they resonate with the suburban folk, for which I've gotten to know all too well in my town.
I think it's a fair question, Pete. I think when it comes to these issues and how some liberals are even afraid of it because of the misinformation and disinformation. I mean, there's so many lies being told about immigrants, legal immigrants, the trans community, the threat to women's sports. Basically what happened was they tried to do this a while ago by bringing up the, trans girls in women's sports, and it didn't catch. I do a lot of work with the Gill Foundation. They talk about, legislation across this country and what we're trying to do to move equality forward. They tried it once, it didn't work. They tried it again, and somehow it did. And so they kept with it. This isn't a real threat. And I understand, what do we do with those women that are like, but I have a little girl and I don't want her competing against other, trans girls in sport. What I will say is that is a conversation to be had. It's not a conversation that will ever happen if you don't get Kamala Harris in the White House. There will be a conversation around it. So if these are the things that are important to you, let's get her in there so the problems can be fixed. If he gets in, the problems are not going to be addressed. There's going to be unilateral decisions across the board with certain things that aren't really a threat. Trillions of dollars it would cost to actually deport people that have come into this country illegally, the way he wants to do this mass deportation. There are things that you can talk to someone. And what I would do with those women is say, okay, let's hold on. Let's get coffee and tell me what's the most important issue to you. I understand this scares you. I understand it's an issue you want to talk about, but this can't be the most important issue to you. And really talk about the things in Project 2025. If there is an issue with anyone, there is a page in this 900 page fucking giant ass book where you could go, here, I'm going to send this to you. I want you to go to this website, type in the keywords. You're going to learn exactly what that's going to do to education. Oh, you're a teacher, but you're worried about them talking about pronouns in school. Let me tell you what they're actually going to do to the Department of Education. Oh, you're a veteran? Let me show you exactly what they're going to do to veterans, so that this dispelling these myths about a fringe group of people that they seem to be so afraid of because of right-wing talking points, we can actually ground them back into reality.
Very well said. And people should heed that advice. I just have to vent for a moment about this trans women in sports issue. They are running, in here in New York. There's a prop. It covers a lot, a referendum, a vote. And what they're saying is that they're protecting girls. And these are the same people who are anti-abortion.
Right.
So it's so infuriating to me. I'm arguing with these people at board meetings and on Facebook and so on because of how hypocritical and how awful it is. Like, they don't care about girls. They want to obviously control women, these people, and be controlled, many of them, unfortunately. But they're saying, protect our girls. And it's like, protect your girls against the trans girl who's playing volleyball. Protect that one girl who doesn't even get off the bench.
Absolutely.
Versus protecting healthcare, access to healthcare. Forget abortion. Just access to healthcare. Like, which one of those things is almost no girl going to have to ever face versus which one of those things is all girls will have to face?
I think that's a great way.
Ever get pregnant or want to get pregnant? If you want to protect girls, you would protect their access to healthcare. And so I just had to vent about how awful that the
hypocrisy is fucking maddening.
Maddening. Protect girls.
Protect girls. Yep. Except, of course, against, they're a rapist or incest or even, equal wages in this country or being able to get health care in a way that they deserve and need. Even it's just the protect girls thing. It's infuriating to me. You don't want someone in a very non-competitive way playing basketball with your daughter, but you want that same daughter to have to carry their baby's rapist to term when they're 12 years old. Like, the arguments are infuriating. And we talked about this, and I know Allison has mentioned it on the Daily Beans podcast that we co-host together. But there's percentages. It's something like you can reach 5% of the population with postcards, and I think it's like 12% with phone calls. Knocking on doors is another, a little bit of a higher percentage. If you have a face-to-face conversation with someone that has respect for you and you have respect for, you can do an 83% turnaround rate with getting people out to vote and understanding the issues. 83%. So the postcards are great. Please keep doing them. Doorbell's great. Please keep doing them. But really reach out to someone and be like, what's your plan to vote on November 5th? And if they're like, I don't think I'm going to, tell me why. Have a conversation with them.
I will talk to anybody that any listener to this show. I will call that person myself. I'm good at it. Dana's good at it. If you're not good at it or they're, you're too close to them, you don't want to have a fight, I'll do it. Give me the number. I'll do exactly. And
send Pete in. Pete's in. Put him in.
And then you just see me come back bruised and battered, all sweaty. And then I tap you and you get in there, Dana. I made no difference with that person. He thinks that Tom Hanks is taking the blood of babies. I can't convince him on the economy, which is my other question to you. Yeah. This is the thing that comes up a lot. I feel the economy isn't great. I feel like things were better 4 years ago. And things are, a lot of things that price points, gas or groceries are still up from where they might have been. All that is very easily explainable to me. And there's been tremendous progress under Democratic leadership. I don't know how you can deny it, but what are your talking points or arguments when it comes to economics and how people feel the economy is? Because it's true that housing is way more expensive in somewhere like Nevada. And there's reasons for that. There's all kinds of reasons, but it's not particular to Democratic presidential policies. That's for sure. And there are solutions that she actually is offering, which are worth submitting. But what do you say to those people who have feelings on the economy?
Well, I think when people are like, she's been vice president for 3 years. Why isn't she doing anything with the economy? It's not necessarily her role right now. She doesn't have control over these things. This is still a Biden administration we're under. Joe Biden is in charge of the things that are happening right now. Yes, she has some responsibility, but you saw that young man that was talking about civics. The vice president can't do much without the president's approval. So there's one thing there. The economy, if you ask if you're better off than you were 4 years ago, I know I'm better off because I was doing Zoom comedy over Facebook because I couldn't leave my fucking house because there was a pandemic and people were dying. So there's that. The other thing is that Kamala Harris has talked about during, let's say, grocery prices, Pete, if someone's like, oh, groceries are so expensive. Yeah, all the grocery chains, these big, massive chains that are making billions of dollars in revenue, they price gouge during COVID. There's proof of it. There's emails that they've raised all these grocery prices during COVID, and we're the ones that had to pay for them. You've got Donald Trump coming in talking about tariffs. Who doesn't even know how tariffs work, apparently? We're paying for them. When you have massive economists and people talking about how Trump's economy, and I love this, they're actually saying his specific economy is going to damage the general public more than Kamala Harris's. Yeah. You have talking points now. People actually trust her on the economy more than they do him now, which is a beautiful thing because he's supposed to be the businessman, When you get apologies from the Apprentice producers going, I'm really fucking sorry. We created this monster. He's actually not a good businessman. Like, I want you to put that in an ad all over the place for the next 12 days.
That would be amazing, for sure. What do you think in the 10 days, 12 days remaining, in terms of coping and dealing with this? You do a daily podcast, The Daily Beans, like me, and that means you guys do a great news segment, turn away from the news. You know everything that's happening, so you can't look away. But maybe other people can. But what is your advice, Dana? A spiritual, mental, emotional guidance that you have for us? Is there a sleeping pill I can take for 12 days?
I wish there was. We've got just over one Scaramucci left in this fucking election. And oh my God. What I would say is try not to disseminate the information on your own. Go to the people you trust. Go to Pete's podcast. Go to the Daily Beans. Listen to the Stephanie Miller Show. Let them disseminate all of this crazy information and give it to you in palatable, digestible pieces so that you don't get overwhelmed. We are not built for this sort of thing. Humans were not built for this sort of information coming in at the fire hose rate that it is. And so give yourself a break if you're like, I feel burnt out. You should feel burnt out. So leave it to some of the people that have a little bit more of a pain tolerance for this, if you will. We'll give you the stories that we think are important, and usually you trust us on that. And then the rest of the time, make sure if you're listening to a podcast, you're listening to myself or Pete, do it while you're walking. Do it while you're outside. Get out into the fresh air. It'll do wonders for you. Look at a tree and think about how beautiful it is. Go look at a sunset. Listen to a bird chirping. And I know I sound like this woo-woo crazy. It affects your happiness. Just get some vitamin D, please.
The best thing I've done in my life as a man, and I'll say it's a little gendered. I feel like women are more likely to do this and not talk about it. But I take a walk with a man every Wednesday in the woods with our dogs. And even if we are living under the Third Reich, as long as I could take that walk, I will find that joy. He is like one of the smartest, most thoughtful, hilarious people I know. And it's such an important thing for me every week. Of course, our weekly hangouts, I love those that we do as well. But all great advice and to get outside for sure. I want to ask you probably not the most important question, but I just want your opinion on it.
All right.
Do you think the Harris campaign, there's this fair debate on the strategy? I don't know who's right, that the Harris campaign shouldn't be banking so much on former Republicans or current Republicans, the way they are working with Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, campaigning with all of these types, versus trying to get the votes of progressives by talking to progressives. And specifically, people talk about making some announcement in Michigan to try to win back Arab American voters, Muslim voters on the issue of Gaza and how she might be different or something.
That's a really good question, Pete. Yeah. I do think it's good to hear that, she wants to put some Republicans even on her in her cabinet. We had a lot of people I just think it's good to have these other ideas in there. I'm not saying let Republicans make policy, but let them have input. They do represent constituents out there. Listen, if I had been in Liz Cheney's, congressional district, I would have flipped my party just to vote for her in the primary. The person they have in there now is horrifying. So it is nice to see her evolution. And trust me, I never thought I would be defending Liz Cheney. We disagree on a shit ton. I don't love that she threw her sister under the bus on marriage equality. I don't love the things that her father did. But these are the things she cares about our democracy. She cares about the Constitution. And she lost her job to fight for that after January 6th. So I've got to give her some respect on at least that point. What your point is talking about other things, Arab Americans and reaching them in places like Michigan. What I will say that this part makes my brain explode, because if there is anyone watching this that thinks that Donald Trump is somehow going to be better for Arab Americans and especially Palestinians in the Gaza area, he has said that he wants to level that area so his pasty little son-in-law can build condos on the land. So I just really want those people to please don't cut off your nose to spite your face. I understand that this is important to you. You have a right to protest. I just hope that you are being informed about what you are actually protesting and what will happen if you vote for Jill Stein or if you vote for Trump, and what's really going to happen to the Palestinian people, because he loves Benjamin Netanyahu. There will be no mercy. Any war crime that's committed is not going to be held to account, because now you have a White House that doesn't have criminal immunity. So he's going to be in bed with these fascists. Please just consider what you are doing. Fight for what you believe in. Continue to protest. But if you want that right to protest, voting for Donald Trump is not going to ensure it.
Exactly. That's a really good point. Yeah. You won't even be able to protest. They'll shoot you. Can we just shoot them in the legs?
Just the legs, just so they can't walk.
Yeah, I don't have any patience for that point of view from Arab Americans, Muslim Americans. I'd love to argue with them. I'm a quarter Lebanese. I knew the plight of the Palestinians before a lot of these people were even born. I cared about it. My brother worked in an ambulance in the West Bank in the summer of 2001. And it's horrifying what has happened there, is my opinion. And it would be far, far worse in all the ways and the points that you just made. You also hear sometimes, I don't really hear people saying this, but I'm sure there are some black folks talking about Kamala Harris's history as a prosecutor and her involvement in any way in the mass incarceration, putting young black men in jail and so on when she was AG or district attorney. What do you say to that argument?
Well, a lot of that got debunked. D.L. Hughley was one of the people responsible for spreading that massive lie about the mass incarceration of black men. He actually came out at the DNC on stage and apologized, because he said it and he was like, I was misinformed. I caused a bunch of damage, and I apologize. So all of the myths about her prosecutorial history need to be researched before people are just regurgitating that bullshit. So, I mean, when we can talk about faults that she's had in the past, and I would love that. One of the things I love about AOC is that she is going hard against this government on what she believes in, but she is also with every cell of her body out there campaigning for Kamala Harris to be president. She is talking about things she would want different in a Biden-Harris administration, but still campaigning for her, because she knows that overall the policies are going to be better for this country and the people who live in this country. So I think you can do both at the same time. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. You can protest for these things and still believe and know that a Trump administration would be disastrous for our democracy. And we have to also know this guy is going toward dementia and he's going toward mental decline. And if you don't believe that they're going to prop him up like Weekend at Bernie's to get J.D. Vance into the presidency, you are delusional.
No doubt about it.
Peter Thiel and Elon Musk want to buy this White House because they have criminal immunity because of the Supreme Court ruling. And if you don't think that J.D. Vance is the Trojan horse, and the moment that, God forbid, they got the White House, they're going to 25th Amendment this guy and put him out to pasture. Come on. I mean, you can see it happening in front of our eyes.
Someday, J.D. Vance will pass away. They'll do an autopsy to find out the cause of death. And when they open him up, they'll find nothing but air because there's nothing in him. He's the most hollow, blank canvas vehicle for bad things. Project 2025, a potential Trump administration, more Christian nationalist judges. Wikipedia says you're gay.
It's
and
true.
I don't know if you are. Wikipedia says it.
No, it's true. That's the one thing in my Wikipedia. It's actually true.
We should play true or false Wikipedia because I read it before.
I don't know who the hell wrote it, by the way. I read it and I was like, this is the worst Wikipedia write-up I've ever seen. So I'm going to try and get it edited. But some of the things in there are true.
Nothing in it should seem embarrassing. And someone hacked mine and said that Pete Dominic was a prop comic. That didn't feel good.
How dare them?
But the reason I ask about your sexual orientation is for you to speak for all the LGBT community in because they're a monolith. What your concerns are. I saw a well-known, well-respected lesbian, Kara Swisher, warning about what could happen in America around adoption. In Italy, the upholder of patriarchy is a woman there. Believe it or not, they can do it. They do. Maloney has made it much harder for gay people to adopt, I believe is the policy. How concerned are you about Gaines 1 being pulled back, marriage equality, serve openly in the military, and that issue around adoption? Before we get to anything trans, I think that people don't realize what it means to be anti-gay. I keep saying you're anti-gay. I don't call people homophobic. I'm saying you're anti because it's easier if you're not for their rights. How worried are you about losing rights that you only recently won?
I think it'll absolutely happen under a Trump administration, Project 2025. I do a lot of work with like the Human Rights Campaign and other political organizations that are protecting the strides that we have made. And I'm talking to Congress people that are in these rooms where they're like, I think we need to revisit Obergefell. Like, we need to write a constitutional amendment. We're going to put this back on the floor to vote on. When you've got Clarence Thomas talking about revisiting, sorry about that.
I didn't hear anything.
Oh, good. I'm the only person that can. When you've got Clarence Thomas talking about how we need to revisit Obergefell, and we need to visit Griswold after, overturning Roe v. Wade, they'll come for it. Anton Scalia will come for it. They have no qualms about this. They've talked about it. They think they're bad judgments. And so for those people out there, don't even get me started on log cabin Republicans, but for those people out there that don't think they'll come after our marriages, they absolutely will. And they will come after, make it harder for LGBTQ people to adopt, which is sort of hilarious because we're not the ones having the babies that are being put up for adoption. I mean, I've never gone out and had sex with my girlfriend and had an accident and, oh shit, I think one of us is pregnant in the morning.
I'm sure you've had accidents during sex with a woman, though. Things that you didn't want to have happen, just not an unwanted pregnancy.
There was actually an accident that happened with me. She was drunk, and I was like, I don't think she knows she's in the wrong hole. It was just a pinky, but it was enough for me to stop what was happening.
See? Even women can do it. Dana said. So, but you, by the way, I think you misspoke when you said Antonin Scalia is going to come forward. You meant Alito, but
thank you. I did misspeak.
Everybody heard you misspeak, but some people thought that Scalia hates gay people so much that his ghost will come back for gay marriage.
Oh, I'm sure he would. But thank you for correcting me live on this podcast. Yeah, those two, man, pieces of work. And of course, Clarence Thomas's wife is white, and he's talking about Loving versus Virginia, and I'm like, do you have mirrors? She's super white, like Storm the Capitol white. She's very white, Pete, and I don't understand how they want to revisit all these things and take us back. Not to mention that guy is bought and paid for by Harlan Crow. So I think, yeah, it's a really good point. I think that when he looks in a mirror, Clarence Thomas sees John Wayne. I think that's who he sees. Probably. Or he wants to be.
I'm kind of white.
Yeah, on someone's yacht.
That's a crazy idea to me, that we can lose rights that we've won. Obviously, abortion and healthcare and economic things, but on marriage equality, that you could lose that after the fight that we all went through, that you went through.
Absolutely. The thought of losing that, people are like, oh, they're not going to take away rights that they've given. Roe v. Wade, it was the law of the land for 50 years. So please don't tell me they're not going to take away rights. Right now, there are ballot initiatives in California trying to enshrine the right to marriage, which we already have so that they can't take it away. But we also are voting on things that it's like making slavery illegal. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing in 2024 that we're still voting on these things? And somehow slavery in indentured servants in prison isn't illegal in every single state.
I'm anti-slavery, but pro-indentured servant. Does that make me controversial?
A little bit.
But just the ones I decide. Specific people. Dana, I will let you go, but I'm very excited by the idea that some people might not have heard you and are so excited because now they all know how smart you are the way I have for a long time. Big fan, long time, second time. It's been way too long since we talked. I really appreciate you joining me to give all these very helpful and inspiring and comforting insights, as well as real life situations and scenarios that someone who pays as close attention and as good of analyst as you are can tell us these truths. Really
just
important.
Stay in the joy. No matter what happens in 12 days, just know that you did everything you could. I mean, at that point, we can't control this. We can't control the fuckery on the other side. We've got Mark Elias leading the, legal path. Thank God for Kamala Harris's team. But at this point, get out and vote, take someone with you, vote down ballot, and then just you've got to take some mental health. We cannot control what's going to happen. We just have to hope that enough people believe in the democracy of this country and they want to save it.
Thank you. Well done. Really appreciate you.
It's good to see you, Pete. Always is. Come back anytime you'll have me.
Yeah, love it. Loved that conversation. Loved Dana Goldberg, and I would love to have her back regularly. That was so good. She's so good. Listen to her on the Daily Beans with Allison Gill and follow her on social media. Let her know that you heard her here. That's a first timer. So make a big impression. Take some time over the weekend to ping her on social media. All of that will be linked in the show notes, but she's very active on Twitter still. Learn more about her, support her there. Thank you for supporting me here all week with all of these women. This has been awesome, and I will try harder to be more organized and make sure that we're more balanced. No promises. Sometimes it's easier than others, but I'm always looking for new voices and new guests to have join me here on the program, and would love to welcome yours. So reach out. standupwithpete@gmail.com is my email, and John Carroll will take us out now as he takes us in. Let's do it. Have a great weekend, everybody. Good luck out there.
On your fence, even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense, and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says